right, we're live.
Oh, baby.
I can hear you. Hopefully, everyone else can hear us too. Let us know in the comments where you guys are tuning in from. I'll make sure we're live on all the different streams. All right, we are set.
Cool. See comments coming in. Let us know if you're on Facebook. I think you have to sign in.
Yeah, there should be a link at the top that you can click, give your name, and it'll allow us to see your name. Otherwise, it shows Facebook user like this, where we don't know who you are leaving a comment for us.
Which is kind of fun. We get to just
try and guess who it is.
Right, but poor things can happen. I think I broke the cardinal rule of broadcasting. I have sideways stripe, which may mess with some of your eyes. So I apologize if I give anybody a migraine.
You have like the what is it called? The cinematic black bars around your video too.
I'll might take the hat off. Just got done. Took my son up to Michigan, senior PGA. Last week was the junior PGA / the regular one. Very few people, almost nobody attends these things, especially on a Thursday and Friday. So we pretty much had free reign of the course. I got on a little radio interview, which was fun. Got to say about 10 words on radio. Mom always said a face made for radio. And it's really fun bringing a 4-year-old with you because everybody looks at him because they're wondering why a little kid's out on a golf course. So we had a great time. Got back just in the nick of time. So we're looking forward to this.
Is he still practicing his golf swing?
You know what? He switched to every other sport pretty much. He loves golf still, but he's been doing a little tennis and pickleball and baseball. I'm not going to push it on him, but be awesome to get out there. Got to meet some really cool people there. You got tour players' wives walking around with their pets and dogs and kind of hanging out. And actually got to meet the caddy for Francesco Molinari, and he got to hang out with Elliot a little bit today. And he loves golf, loves young kids. But that sounds bad. He loves kids.
He loves young kids specifically.
Let's strike that for the record. But really nice fella. He's from Spain. Molinari's from Italy, but this guy's from Spain. He was following Olazabal around. So had a fun time. Really neat to see some guys you watch, growing up on TV, and you get to kind of see them in real life or meet the people around them. And I love people in the world. So
nice.
People from all over. Matthew, I guess we'll kick this back off. We've been doing this is 5, so we've survived. This is still going. Thanks for making these happen.
Still going.
And what are you excited about for this one?
I'm excited to learn a little more about old books because I know nothing about older books and collectibles. But like everyone, you see them all over the place and wonder if you've passed over some gems in the past. And so I'm curious if there's some little tidbits we can pull out of how to spot things a little better when you're out in the wild or just looking through things. Because I know, like you and me, when we were going through that warehouse in Springfield, we knew we were passing by things left and right we had no idea about. So it'll be fun to learn some tips and tricks on how to handle those.
Yeah, so we'll introduce our guest in just a second. Last time we talked about an Amazon book with a sales rank of 0 that sold 4 times during a lunch break. That was kind of a fun story. I don't have anything really fascinating. I've got a good sale actually of an old set of books that we'll get to with Max here in just a second. Any interesting things on your side?
Interesting things.
I know
nothing majorly. The biggest interesting thing was this morning when we got an email saying that our New Price credentials were going to be shut down next month. Everyone that's a member of New Price probably got an email this morning saying that something about New Price's credentials, June 24th, will be shut down. So we're talking with Amazon. We did not receive an email from them before they emailed everyone else. So we'll figure out what that issue is. Right now, everything's active with New Price. Everything's up. You can still reprice. So we'll get that resolved before whatever cutoff date was listed on that email. But that was a nice, fun surprise this morning.
And typical Amazon fashion, they didn't, email us and say, hey, here's your questions. And just to be clear, it's totally separate than Scout IQ. It's different credentials. Yes. So if you're, on the IQ train, nothing to worry about there. And we'll sort it out anyway. We got a month. But in typical Amazon fashion, they didn't go right to the source. They went to all of the users. And our hunch is it's related to the SP API, which is the new API that Amazon's rolling out over the next couple months. But by the end of the year, it has to be completely migrated over. So hopefully you didn't get scared away by that.
Yeah, we should be all good there.
Susan says she has some old books. wants to learn how to sell them. So we will do that. Well, let's introduce our guest. Enough you guys didn't come here to hear us yak about stuff. So let's bring on our guest.
Alrighty.
We were teasing Max as we got on here.
There I am.
There he is.
Hey.
I made it, Caleb. I made it.
I was running behind and we were doing a little mic check, and poor Max was trying to click his link and it was opening in Firefox, and the software we're using, StreamYard, is phenomenal, but it doesn't work in Firefox. And so we're like, download Chrome, click the link. No, right, click the link. And Max is really good with the old school technology, and I was giving him a little bit of grief, but we're glad you're here.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Matthew.
So Max, tell us who you are, tell us where you're from, and we'll kind of get into your background, your history, and how we met as well.
All right. Originally from Massachusetts, but my parents moved down here in early 70s. So I grew up down here in South Florida. I live in Deerfield Beach, Florida now, which is part of Fort Lauderdale, and I'm a full-time eBay bookseller. I specialize mostly in antiquarian or older and collectible books most likely without barcodes. And I built a very successful business doing that while I was teaching for 18 years in the public school system. And 2 years ago, I got out of the school system to devote all of my time to this business, helped the business grow, and met Caleb along the way. And we developed a business friendship and did some stuff together. And we knew we were going to do some sort of conversation podcast sooner or later. And now is the time, I guess, because we've been talking about it, Caleb and I, for a couple of years, actually.
Yeah, you've been dropping subtle and not so subtle hints for a while. Yeah, it's been fun to see your business grow from when we first met. So South Florida is not the most friendly atmosphere for books, just in terms of the humidity and everything else. Does that tend to be a problem for you?
I think it's a problem everywhere, whether it's New England and mustiness and coldness, or South Florida and the heat and humidity. But as long as the books are in air conditioning and away from sunlight, you're not going to do any major damage to them. A lot of books, though, they are damaged when I get them. And as long as the subject matter is okay, it's still going to sell. I think in the past couple months, I've sold at least 10, 20 books minus their covers, minus their spines. And it's the subject matter that the people are after, the historical value as well.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know how we originally met. I knew we've been talking on Instagram and probably Facebook for a bit. But Matthew and I, a couple of years ago, Matthew could probably dig up the link while we're getting into it. But
yeah,
we were in Springfield. One of our business partners lives near that area of Missouri, and it just so happened that there was somebody who reached out. I forget, maybe they found us, maybe we found them, and they had a family member pass away. I think their father passed away, and they had a entire kind of a warehouse. His dad was a big collector of books, and had a giant warehouse full of books that we went in. We actually recorded some content in there. It was a lot of just liquor boxes full of books, and it's just stacked like any collector. I guess he had done. I don't know if he'd ever really gotten around to doing stuff at flea markets and trying to resell them. I think he was just collecting, and never really tried to flush stuff out. He had a ton of first editions, a lot of older books, and again, as we're primarily Amazon sellers, we know there's value there, but we really don't know what to look for. Some of the basics we do, but Matthew and I kind of went through with everything with barcodes, and then I think Max, we had just caught wind of you or just heard about you, and we're trying to coax you to flying out there, and you kept coming up with excuses, and you're like, hey, I don't trust you. I think you might try and murder me. And we ended up just doing something digitally. You're like, hey, it's fine, just FaceTime me in. We'll jump on a Skype call. And I was like, well, we don't have much time, and like that's just inefficient, whatever. I kind of was trying to push you away. And we jumped on, and it was like a computer was in my head. He's literally a walking encyclopedia. So Matthew and I would walk around, literally pop open a box of older books, and I just had my phone up and was just kind of, panning over them. And instantly Max like, oh, go to that one. Look at this one. Nope. Yeah, go to the third one over. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's probably worth $40. Okay, next one over. Ooh, that might be $100 book. Oh my gosh, that set over there, you have to look at it. Look at the flyleaf. What's the publication here? So he just knew his stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like one of those episodes of Stump the Star. And Max literally knew almost every book that we kind of showed him. So it's phenomenal. All we did, we'll kind of get into the program and kind of what Max offers now. But I don't like to do eBay. I do a very little bit of it, but we're primarily Amazon. We're primarily stuff with barcodes. So Max is literally the perfect opposite. If you drew a Venn diagram, there's very little overlap in the middle. However, there it is. You know, we're over here on the Amazon world. Max is over here on the eBay world. And, you know, he's doing the collectible stuff that I don't even want to know how many books I've passed up and recycled or donated that, you know, there's definitely value there. So we boxed that all up, sent it to Max. He's been selling stuff, you know, from that lot and from a couple other deals that we've done. And actually we had a sale this past week, I think.
Yeah, a couple days ago.
You wanna spill the beans on that one?
It was a 48 volume set of Victor Hugo's works in French, also ex-library. I think that came from Chicago, if I remember correctly, Caleb. It
That would have
had
been Southern Illinois. I'm blanking. They kind of all run together, but I think it was Southern Illinois.
And it was a 48 volume set. We probably had it listed for about a year and a half, but it sold the other day for just under $600.
Yeah,
and
so really good.
I was excited to send you that text message.
Yeah, that's a fun one to get. It's always fun when you work for like with somebody else and you can send them a note that says, "Hey, something really cool just happened, and I'm sending you money." Versus, "Hey, we need to charge you something," right? Yeah. It's always a fun text to say, "Hey,
I do it daily. I love waking up in the morning and seeing what sold while I was sleeping, and hopefully a lot of that is consigner books, and I can start their day off with those big sales as well."
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick pause here to recognize our sponsors that we don't have. I want to dive back when we come back here. I want to get back into your history and your background and how you became so knowledgeable in books. But I forgot to jump in. This is Books and Bourbon. This is episode number 5. So whether you're watching, I know a lot of people on the West Coast, it's 1 o'clock. Maybe you shouldn't be drinking just yet. Let's go around the horn. What are we drinking today?
I'll go first. So I'm the only one drinking, I think, today, and I'm the one in the earliest time zone. So and I'm on East Coast time today. That's what I'm telling myself. I've just got some Basil Hayden toast. I don't know if that's focusing. It's probably focusing on me. I have to cover up my face there. Basil Hayden is just a good, simple, cheaper bourbon. That's good, but I hadn't tried toast before. I found this in the store a little while ago and decided to give it a try, and it's been pretty good. I don't know much history on Basil Hayden, but if you like toasty bourbons, Basil Hayden toast really has that charred oak barrel double flavor to it. So it's good.
Fantastic. And if you like toast, you should look up anything that is double oaked is another phrase that basically means the same thing. I believe it's the same process. So Woodford Reserve has a double oaked. You can usually find it for $60. Costco will sell it for $45 sometimes. And it's a pretty good bottle. So enjoy that. Max, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a 2022 Perrier with lime. slim aluminum can.
That's a tough vintage to track down.
It goes easy this time of the afternoon too, though.
That's beautiful. I went a little too hard last night. Karaoke in town. It's a small town. We don't have much else to do. So I'm giving my liver a little bit of a break today. But we were drinking last night. I don't work. I feel like I work there. There's a small. And I got the fuzz turned way up. Maybe I should. Holy cow!
It doesn't want to focus on it. Mine was doing the same thing.
Lumina is getting out of control. Am I grainy at all either? Like around the edges? Maybe I need to change that.
Maybe a little around the edges, but it could just be the connection. I couldn't tell.
They also think I'm offline, so that's fun. Anyway, we'll try and touch that up. Anyway, this is a.
Keep going.
It's a rye whiskey. It says Limestone Branch. It's out of it is Kentucky. Typically, when you get into the limestone region, that's how you kind of filter the bourbon out, and it makes it really, really smooth. That's a really popular process in Tennessee, so just south of Kentucky, obviously. But this is really good. I found it when down in Kentucky a couple weeks back, and typically rye is pretty spicy and hot and kind of burns the tongue. Because it goes through the limestone, this is actually remarkably smooth. So this was really good. It's 100% rye, and the proof is 94, so it's less than 50%. alcohol anyway, which is also why it is smoother. So that was kind of fun. Got to enjoy that with some friends last night at the local restaurants here. And I am drinking water. So Max, represent, you and I can just drink some water. So if you guys see me drinking a lot, it's not bourbon, it's water.
Sure. Oh, we got a comment for you, Caleb.
Oh boy, 3 new bottles. Help me decide which to open. Evan Williams single barrel, Jack Daniels bottle and bond, or Elijah Craig private barrel proof. Well, barrel proof, everybody loves the high proof, so maybe that's a good one to start. I do like Elijah Craig in general. That stuff's pretty spicy. It's really good for sipping around a campfire. I don't know that I've had. Actually, I have an Evan Williams single barrel. I haven't opened it, so maybe I'll join you next week and open that one. My vote's going to be the Elijah Craig barrel proof, but probably next up will be the Evan Williams, and lastly would be the Jack Daniels.
Nice.
All right, Max. Now that we've thanked our sponsors, let's jump back in. So, where did you go to book school? How did you become so knowledgeable in the world of old books?
That's a great question. I was an English major in college, so I was a voracious reader. And when I got back down to Florida, I got a job in an antiquarian bookstore. It was one of those 3-story, very dark and dank bookstores, over 100,000 books. This was pre-internet. This was pre-eBay, pre-Amazon. If you wanted to sell a book with someone not coming into your store, you had to put it in a catalog, and that catalog would go to all the book buyers across the country. So you would have to actually handle the book. You'd have to understand about the publisher and what a real first edition is. There's a lot of misinformation on what first editions are that's out there. And back then, when I was learning the business without realizing what I was learning, I was handling all of these antiquarian and rare books and understanding the value, and most importantly, understanding the customer who bought these types of books, who bought a Civil War book specifically about a specific regiment, not just a history of the Civil War. So I learned really about niche markets, and those niche markets is really what the people like to buy in the rare book world. And so I worked there for probably close to a decade, and moved on to some other things and teaching and coaching girls basketball in high school. But I was always going to thrift stores, always pulling out good books and building up a great book collection for myself without ever thinking I was going to sell anything. I was just collecting cool stuff. Somewhere down the line, I got an idea that to start selling these, and tried to figure out how to sell something on eBay. I didn't know. There was no content out there at the time. And I learned, after a couple of days of how to list a book. I finally listed 3 books one day, and all 3 books sold within 24 hours. And, the first time you hear that ka-ching, it was a life changer. Yeah. The shock of pulling a book off of your shelf, taking pictures of it, and then then someone buys it in Germany or Oregon or Massachusetts, and they're thousands of miles away from you. It instantly, almost like an epiphany, opened up a different world for me. And so I would start listing my books, and I was making a nice side hustle as I was teaching high school. And my goal at the time was, if I could ever make $100 a day selling books on eBay, that's all I would need along with my teaching. But it blew up, and it blew up pretty quick. And I had to start replenishing my stock. So I was finding myself after school or after basketball practice going to thrift stores to the wee minute they closed, just trying to find good books, listing them in my spare time and squeezing hours and minutes in, and doing the shipping. The $100 a day, of course, turned into $200, which turned into $300 a day. And I was sort of coming to a crossroads in my life. What happens if I do $500 a day? I'm making well under $200 a day as a teacher. Now I can stay home and sell books for $500 a day. I got out of teaching 2 years ago, went full time into this, and now it has just exploded. And a few years ago, as the internet community and the social media community was coming out with selling things on eBay and Amazon, I was noticing this whole new world about Gaylords. And I remember specifically watching a Reezy video going through a Gaylord and just scanning all the barcodes and they kept saying, recycle the non-barcode books, recycle the non-barcode books. And instantly I was like, what do you mean recycle them? You can't recycle them. That's where the real money is. And so that idea started marinating in my head. And probably within a year of that idea is when I probably first reached out to you, Caleb, and started, we were sort of birthing this idea about trying to get to these Gaylords. And I started doing it on my own and reaching out to some SBA sellers and convincing them what I can do for them and please give me a shot. And now we have over 20, closer to 30 consigners, all over this beautiful country that are sending me books. Sometimes they come in boxes. Sometimes they'll send me 1 box or 8 boxes at a time. Sometimes they'll send me a pallet of books. Sometimes they'll send me, like you did, Caleb, they'll send me a Gaylord. I remember that, I think it was that library in Chicago, you just had a push cart and I would tell you which books to put in the cart. So it went right from your finger into the cart and into a Gaylord and right to my garage. So it was very instantaneous for me. And I believe, if I remember correctly, we probably sold a few books rather quickly. And so I was always excited to send you those text messages.
Yeah, it's kind of fun in the early stages there. That was an interesting one. I should try and dig up some photos. We had a giant box truck. They didn't have a lift gate. We couldn't rent one with a lift gate. They just didn't have it available or whatnot. So imagine just a giant U-Haul truck. I think it was it was a big guy, 26 foot maybe.
Yeah, that's the biggest is 26, I think, for U-Hauls.
So it's only supposed to hold 10,000 pounds. Smile, don't tell the insurance companies, all that good stuff. People have weighed them down. But this was a location, actually it did have a lift gate, but they didn't have the ability to get the book. The library had a series of steps to get upstairs, like to get to the main level, and everything was on the main level. There was some stuff in the basement that we had to get up. There was no ground level access. That was the only way out other than a regular door, and you can't fit Gaylords through a door. So we either had to decide to load up everything that we wanted. And part of our deal with the library was we had to remove everything. So we had to get every book off the shelves and put it into Gaylords, whether we wanted it or not. And so that was a really tough day because we had to decide if we were going to set the Gaylords up outside and literally move everything from inside outside and then put on the lift gate and go from there. And then we just got the bright idea. I wonder if we can just like take the lift gate down, raise it all the way up, and then just back up to the stairs. And it just barely spanned, like the back tires were touching the bottom of the steps. The edge of the lift gate probably held, maybe 6-8 inches of overlap. And we were able to drop that down onto the concrete and take the center, hole out between the doors and actually fill the Gaylords, put them on a pallet jack and get them into the truck. So that was one of those like, oh my goodness, this is just the geometry of the steps, the geometry of the truck. It worked out. So I'm glad that worked out. Otherwise you might not have gotten them. So let's talk a little bit about eBay. We'll come back to the program and how you can benefit other people. So again, we typically, and I don't know, Matthew, did you ever really try and sell much on eBay in terms of older books, or did you just?
I've never sold older books on eBay. I've sold other items on eBay, but not older books. No.
Yeah. So for those of you that do Gaylords, you of course run into this a lot. You get a lot of books without barcodes. You run into old sets, just old musty. We call them dusties. Just like an old bottle of bourbon is a dusty. You get these old dusty books, and we'd run across them. And typically you're like, yeah, maybe it's worth looking at, or sometimes it catches your eye and you're like, I bet I could sell it on eBay. And you can kind of look up stuff on sold history on eBay, but most books pre like 1973 don't even have ISBNs. So in terms of researching it, you've got to look up the edition. You got to know which year it was published. You got to kind of find the right book. And it's not as easy to match it up one for one as it is when you just scan a barcode and figure it out on Amazon. So I've let a lot of this stuff go in the past, and I know there's money there, and I know you can research and understand. And Steve Eisenstein is another really helpful resource. He has a radio show program called Bucks on the Bookshelf, and I think he's down in South Florida as well, Max. I don't know if you've run across him, but he's got like I think it's a Saturday morning show that he does regularly, and it's a little segment, talks about collectible books, and he deals with really collectible stuff, stuff in the thousands and tens to even hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I remember, we look at the stuff in the Gaylords and you're like, man, you're throwing money away and cherry picking. I'm sure I've overlooked a lot of stuff too. So tell us a little bit about like the eBay model. Do you sell on other platforms as well, or is it primarily just eBay?
It's 100% eBay. We take 8 to 12 pictures of each book. We show the edges. We show the copyright page. I mean, we're trying to sell to the discerning book buyer who wants these higher end books. And so it's completely different from listing a book on Amazon, merchant fulfilled, where, you scan the barcode, put it on your shelf, and away you go. To do a good eBay book, it's going to take a minute to 90 seconds to get it done the right way consistently. And so you can do 20 to 30 books in an hour, or 50 books in a couple hours shift, which is what we try to aim for here. But it's definitely a lot different. And there's a lot of Amazon sellers out there who are scanning books, and they just don't have time to go on the computer and do the research and match up the information with the proper information or the right information to make sure it's the right edition that people are looking for. And so, it's a completely different world than that.
Sure. So everything pretty much on eBay. You take good photos. You obviously know what they're worth. How do you come up with the right price? Do you do auctions? Do you do fixed prices? Obviously, you have a really good understanding of what a book is worth. But how do you come up with that initial price? And then, how often do people, lowball you, or how does that process work?
We get lowballed every day from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed. I price things higher than the general market because everything I do is a fixed price, 99% of the time with a fixed price with the best offer. But sometimes you sell those books rather quickly. They don't even make a bet. They don't even make an offer. They just want the book. And that, 80% of the time, most book people are just buying the book because they want it. They're not trying to nickel and dime you at all. We also charge shipping, so there's little money to be made off shipping. But I use a host of resources. eBay is okay to price books, but it's not the best source. It doesn't go back far enough, and especially with the kind of books I'm dealing with, we're dealing with sometimes books that are 100, 200 years old. That those types of books aren't selling on eBay every day in the first 90-day period before they wipe out that slate. Worthpoint.com is a very good site. Abooks or abe.com is a very good site. But there's a whole host of sites out there to do the research. But the most important thing is you have to know what you're looking for. The title alone and the author isn't always enough. Some people are looking for a specific edition because those editions change throughout the years as well, and the information is different.
Yep. Well, my little brother works for Google, and he kind of jokes. He's like, one of the reasons I'm a good programmer / developer is I can use Google better than others. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, because I kind of asked him too, like, when you study programming languages, do you just know the syntax? Do you know how everything works? And the answer typically is, well, kind of, like they've solved problems before, but they just understand how logic and the general code works. And then you have to go and Google other ways to kind of go about it. So he's like, I'm really good at Google. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I know what to ask Google to get the desired answer. So it sounds like what you're doing, kind of which directions to sort of to kind of pursue to track down what that actual value may be worth.
Right. And at the same time, I also have a very good idea of what the book buying public wants. So for instance, when you and I were on that video in Chicago, you were asking me, well, what section should I start in first? And I remember that conversation. I said, go to genealogy. So there's certain types of categories, that people really are sought after. And genealogy is one of those categories. Anything genealogy.
Sure. So And then let's talk through like sell-through type stuff. In the Amazon space, we're typically sending in stuff, e-scores of, a couple, typically not super low e-scores. Of course, every once in a while, books with ranks of 0 can still sell. But as we discovered last week, see, Flips for Miles says we got only a couple likes. Everybody liked the video. Make Miles feel better about it. Love Miles. He's such an encourager. So thanks for being on here as well, Miles, and jumping in and pumping up the crowd. But I forget where I was. Miles made me lose my train of thought.
I was talking about genealogy books and certain categories.
Oh yeah, and then I want to have a quick understanding of sell-through rate. So on Amazon, we typically list stuff, the kind of the old school rules, don't list it with a sales rank under 1 million, which is a little bit BS, and hopefully people that have followed us for a while know that. But in general, on Amazon, you typically send it to sell anywhere between 20-ish% of your inventory each month. So if you have 1,000 books in inventory, you should be selling 1% a day merchant fulfilled, maybe a little less a day FBA, and typically you tend to sell about 20% for the month. So about 200 books on an inventory of 1,000. What's a typical turn rate that you're seeing in your business? Because I imagine it's a lot more long tail books, isn't it?
Yes and no. It all depends on what I'm getting. I recently acquired from one of my consigners about 200 Nintendo Power magazines from the 80s and 90s. I think we probably sold 100 to 150 in the first 7 days. Wow. So the sell through for that was very quick. But the set that we just sold for you last week, we had that for probably 18 months before that sold. But I'm selling between 30 and 50 books a day, all over the country, all over the world, in fact. And so
how many active listings do you have right now, roughly?
Over 12,000.
Okay, so do the math. If we go on the high end of that 50 a day, you said 12,000 listings.
Yeah, but that isn't all books either, though. I would say probably 6,000 to 8,000 are books.
Yeah, on if it's even 10,000,
right,
we're looking at a sell-through rate of 0.5% a day, which actually isn't terrible. Although if it is on the lower end of 30 books a day, then you're looking at 1/3 of 1%.
Right.
So multiply that by 30 days in a month, you're looking at still 9 to 10% sell-through. So that's actually not very bad. And do you have a rough feel? Like, I sent you a couple of Gaylords from, I think, Chicago. Of those books that I sent you that you listed, do you have a rough idea of how many, like what your total sell-through will be? Like in the Amazon book, we typically sell 70 to 80% of every book that we list.
Right. Yeah, I was about to say, I think that we probably sold 70% of that Gaylord already. And then there's some higher price books that we have that haven't sold yet, but they're going to sell eventually. So I don't know if we'll ever get to 100%. Some things just sputter and die on the shelves. But I think we'll probably get to 80 to 90% with what you sent me.
Yeah, and part of that is your knowledge, because you're listing stuff that's probably going to sell. You understand where there's a market for something versus, whatever. And again, I think the same rules apply whether you're doing eBay or Amazon. It's how risky is it? If it's not likely to sell, then you need to have a high profit potential to even justify doing it, versus if it's really likely to sell, like those Nintendo guides, you can accept a really small margin of $1 or $2 or $3 per book, just because the chances of it selling are incredibly high.
Yeah, except for the fact that in the eBay collectible market, we're not dealing so much with smaller margins. Those magazines were selling from $15 a piece to $150 a piece. So the consignor who gave me those magazines, they had a very good month with me. And those were magazines that they were going to be thrown out. They were in a Gaylord and they didn't know what to do with them. And I had been talking to them for a while, and they sent them my way, and I'm sure they're happy.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So what's a typical, what's an average selling price of most of the stuff that you sell?
Right. I would say the average sale price is between $20 and $30.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of what the days of FBA used to be.
But I sold about 20 something books today, and The lowest price one was $8, but the highest price one was $2.50. So
Yep.
the range is always wide, and the range is like that every day. Just because you're dealing in the antiquarian market, you're going to be selling high-end books usually every day.
Yep. That's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about your like, how do you store these? How do you locate them properly? Like, do you have a whole series of shelves and use like the number and letter system for the bays, or do you just have a room full of boxes that you try not to knock over every time you walk
Well,
in?
you can see behind me already where some of them are, but I have a 2-car garage that I converted to a bookstore, and that's what we use. I have library shelving in there, and everything is lettered and numbered. A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3. And we use those library shelves on both sides, and we've stacked about 13,000 books in there, and we have room for 20,000 more.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What other like eBay challenges? Do you have a high return rate? Do you get disgruntled customers? I imagine if someone's spending a lot of money on a book, they tend to be a little more understanding actually, versus someone that's paying $6 and gets angry that it was one day late.
Right. Well, based on the horror stories I've heard from Amazon, yeah, the return rate is nowhere near that on eBay. I probably get a return once every 150 items. And most of the time that's because the USPS worker neglected the package going into the mailbox. They just stuffed it in and ripped off a corner of a book or something like that. But there's very few returns. Condition wise, this is why we take a lot of pictures. When you list an Amazon book, there's no multiple pictures to look at most of the time. When you do an eBay book, we're taking up to 12 pictures. And so depending on that prospective buyer, if they have specific questions, they can always ask me. But because we take up to 12 pictures, all questions are answered. If something has highlighting or handwriting in there, we make sure to we don't hide it. We make sure to take pictures of at least 2 of those pages so people know that there's probably handwriting in there. I don't detail that in the description. I use the same description in every one of my books, and I allow the pictures to tell the story of the book.
Yep. Well, and again, because you have a higher selling price, you can afford to spend a little more time and put a little more love and attention into it.
Right.
One of the downsides, I have a marketing background. I used to do marketing for a joint replacement company, and I love being able to tell a story and show a little personality versus just selling widgets. And Amazon has really tried to turn books into widgets, to lack of a better term, because it's just a commodity. You want a copy of Good to Great, cool. Do you want merchant fulfilled or FBA? Do you, which seller do you want? And ultimately, price is the most important decision. And some people will look and they won't buy acceptable, and they're looking for a new copy or like new, right? So sometimes you're looking for better condition, but ultimately it's mostly about price. And very few sellers take photos of books. You certainly can and try and make your listing stand out on Amazon, but in the grand scheme of things, it's usually not worth the headache to actually go through that effort to do it, just based on that. eBay is a whole different world. You have the ability to take amazing photos, to let the book, have a bit of personality, and people can actually see what they're getting, which is, it's a different game. It's a much slower game than some of us are used to in terms of, scan lister or seller list and just mowing through a pile of books and listing them as quickly as possible. You're actually be able to kind of give them white glove treatment and do the book justice that way.
Yeah, we're holding every book. We're flipping through every book. We find some amazing things in books sometimes too because we do that. But yeah, each book is handled and gone through. And condition, I don't want to say condition isn't an issue. There are some buyers out there who want the top condition book, but it all depends on the subject matter. If someone's buying a book from 1827, chances are they're not going to get a high graded book. But if someone's buying, I recently sold the Madonna sex book that came out in the 90s. That buyer asked me about condition because that book is inside of a silver Mylar cover, and they wanted to know if there was any scratches or dents to it. So, a lot of times it also depends on the book. There's a whole school of people who buy landmark books for their kids and their homeschooling. And for some reason, they love those landmark books with the dust jackets, and they want to know the condition of the dust jacket. And they want you to take pictures of not only the cover of the dust jacket, take the dust jacket off the book and show the inside. So, there's all these little intricacies to these books. And the longer I do it, the more custom and more knowledgeable I get with them. I'm still learning every day too.
Yep.
That never stops.
In terms of shipping everything out, so there's no like FBA program with eBay. So you have to store everything, ship it out yourself, manually touch it. Are you like what is an inexpensive if someone buys an $8 book? How do you package that up and mail it? Because that's a question that gets asked a lot with merchant fulfilled. And then if you have a $500 book, are you doing anything differently for that?
Yeah, I'm a book lover. So whether it's a Nintendo Power magazine for $15 or an $8 book, everything's getting bubble wrapped. If it's a magazine, it's also getting cardboard to keep it from not bending. But if it's a book anywhere north of $200, it's being shipped in a box with bubble wrap and not in a bubble mailer. It goes in a special book box. They're cheap enough to buy. And if you sell a $200 book, what's another $1 for a box? To make sure it gets there the right way. I have very few problems with that. I learned by my boss back in the day, that, these are commodities and these are luxuries too. People don't have to have books. And if they're spending a couple $100 on a book, make sure you care for it the right way. And so that has stuck with me all these years. And that's why, I'll bubble wrap an $8 book. I want, when that book arrives to that buyer, I want them to feel special when they open it and they go, this person cared about this book coming to me.
Yeah. I love talking to you. You can just see the quality that you take care of the books, you take care of your business, and you treat your customers with the same element. So that's very refreshing. Again, we tend to be in a commoditized world of widgets, and it can be cutthroat. And how many books can we scan through in a day? And you're kind of going the opposite approach, saying let's slow down, let's find the value, let's build the right relationships and see what this turns into. So that's it's really refreshing to hear that. Matthew, what other like eBay specific questions do you have? Anything there? And then we'll actually get to your questions. But if you guys do have questions and want Max to answer those, we'll kind of explain his program in just a second. If you have some other questions, I see a couple that have popped in here. We will field a bunch of those kind of roundtable style near the end of this call. So go ahead and drop those as well.
Yeah, so I have a few basic questions for you. One of them is because I see them all the time in the group, but also as questions I've had myself. So very beginner questions here, but you always see really popular fiction books like Harry Potter and stuff like that. Are first editions always valuable, or does it not matter at all if you see first edition on something like Harry Potter or a popular book that was made a while ago?
Anything that's a first edition, there's going to be a buyer for that. But a business like the Harry Potter industry, whenever they release a new movie, there's always a new group of kids and new groups of parents who want to buy those first editions for those kids because they think they're going to be worth thousands and thousands of dollars 20 years from now. So always collecting the Harry Potter first editions is always good. But the problem with that is almost every Harry Potter book says first edition. And you have to look at the number line because most buyers, sadly, as long as the book says first edition, they think they're getting a first edition. But in order for it to be a first edition, there needs to be more information other than the words first edition. They produce so many of those books that they never took it out. And so you could have a Harry Potter, the first book, and it could start at number 25, 26, 27, 28. Well, if it starts at 25, you're buying the 24th printing of the first edition. You're not buying the true first edition, which would be a number 1 barcode, bar line 1 through 10. So, I sometimes get upset when I see these things sold on eBay and it's not the right information. And I know that there are going to be people years from now who are going to try to sell their first edition Harry Potter books to a bookseller and be like, I bought these. The person said they were first editions. And then they're going to get the rude awakening. So No,
that makes sense.
Yeah, but to answer your question, if there's a movie tie, if there's a book tie, a TV tie, I mean, if there's a news story or a historical tie, people are going to want those first editions, whether it's a paperback first edition by Avon or a Rand McNally Atlas first edition. There's always going to be that market for the first editions.
All right, so another one for you then. That was a good answer to that. You always see old giant Bibles in thrift stores, things like that. Are old giant Bibles, there's so many of them, they're not worth very much? Or how do you know what Bibles are worth a lot? Because I know some of them are, but you see older giant Bibles all over the place.
Any giant Bible, don't laugh at this, Caleb. Any giant Bible, I'll take. The bigger, the better. If it has a latch and a buckle, even better. The older, the better. I just sold the other day. I had a German Bible. I sold it for one of our people in the chat. I see. I had a German Bible, and the market's very hot for Bibles, but I didn't want to price it. I didn't want to put a number on it. So I wanted to do auction just as an experiment, because this consignor sends me books all the time, and I wanted to try something different with them. So I listed the book for $9.99 auction, and someone offered me $2.50 within the first 2 hours of that book being listed. They had to have it, and we sold it. So, but I also sell Bibles from 2001. The only thing I can't sell as far as Bible goes is most of the time, if someone has already written their name on their ownership name on it, and they've made notes, most of the time that's not a good Bible to sell, unless it's a Freemasonry Bible, and that Mason had signed his name, and usually they put things inside the pages as well. You get some goodies in there too.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but the Freemason Bibles are good too. But when you say large, big Bibles, if you saw those at a thrift store, I'll kill you if you don't send it to me.
Sounds good. All right, last one, then we'll get to the people in the chat because there are a lot of questions popping up. Are there any dates that we should keep our eye out for, that if something was made before that or has a date before 19 whatever, 18 whatever, that it automatically has some value to it just because of its age?
No. Just because a book is old does not make it valuable. The information is what makes it valuable. So the best way for me to explain this is if one of my consigners sent me a picture of a book, and the book was all about snakes, and it was 1945, that wouldn't excite me. But if the book said everything you want to know about snakes in the South Carolina from 1810 to 1888, when you go that specific into a niche, then you have a valuable book. Okay. So you don't want to sell books on the history of the Civil War. You want to sell a book about a regiment or about a specific battle. The more specific you get with the book market, the higher the dollar is going to be.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, it makes it a lot easier to pick and choose.
Yeah. I sell a lot of yearbooks, and the best yearbooks that I sell are the military yearbooks from the battalions from World War II or Korea or Vietnam. Those sell for, excess of $100 to $500. Because it's something very specific. It's not just about the World War II. It's about that regiment in World War II.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons you really like the genealogy books and a lot of the like local location type books. If it's referencing a specific city, like the history of such and such a place or Southern Illinois or whatnot. So people groups, time frames, etc. Again, kind of our rule with Amazon is the weirder the better. If you wonder why would someone write a book about it, then it's probably a good thing to check out and research more. And the same thing holds true. There's usually a very, very limited audience that would actually be interested in looking for those books. And there are also not very many of them printed for the most part. Right. So somebody, as soon as you list it on eBay, instead of like, well, great, I guess I got to pay $200, they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is here. I'm so excited to find this and learn more.
Yeah, I get thank yous a lot of times when people buy books that they've been looking for. Not that I have the only copy in the world, but there are people who are looking for that genealogy book, history of the Smith family in Rhode Island, something specific like that. And of course, there was probably well under 1,000 print run of that. And so when they can get that and they can tie their own family history finally to this history in a book, they're just so thankful for finding this, and this is why I always call this stuff paper gold.
I like that.
Yeah. And it's funny too, Caleb, because those genealogy books in a Gaylord, they look like nothing. There's nothing on the cover. It's like library binding. There's just some words on the spine, but there's nothing to show you it's an exciting book.
That's like the nice little surprise when you pop it open and go, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's some magic there.
Before we go to some of these questions, Caleb, do you want to talk about his program real fast? I can throw the link in the screen. That way people can see it the rest of the show when we're talking.
Yeah. So we've been, again, you guys are familiar with the restricted inventory. So Romer or Avery, I guess he's in Colombia right now, only speaking Spanish. So maybe we need to do this segment in Spanish. But Romer has that program. So for those of you that can't sell like certain gated textbooks or restricted textbooks or just some restricted inventory in general, he's got a handful of accounts that are open and available to sell that. So he sells that in consignment. It's traditional consignment. Most of my business now is consignment. We sell for libraries and thrift stores and entities and big family collections, and we do 50-50 split. We're taking people that don't want to open an Amazon account, they don't want to figure it out. We do the filtering for them. We provide all that value. We sell them and typically split profits. Some people do 60-40 splits, 70-30. It really just depends. 50-50 is kind of what we do. Restricted inventory is basically the same thing for your restricted inventory, the books that you can't sell. So you send them off. Avery's team will take them. They've got a whole process for tracking it. And when the book sells, it's something you weren't able to do anyway, and it kind of adds some money. There's people doing it in the CD space as well. And Max, I'm sure he's not the only one doing it, but as far as we know, at least in our community, he's kind of taken that on. So I remember he was kicking around the idea. I don't think we were the first that you were working with, but I remember going through that process and making sure you could handle the volume and everything that looks like. But Max's program, and I'll let you kind of to explain that a little bit more, but it's basically the same model. Is you're going to share your knowledge. You're going to kind of help be the scanning app, so to speak, to actually show which books are worth it. And I'll let you explain how that works in just a second. And then we take the books that Max says are great. Sometimes we FaceTime through libraries. We've gone through older book collections that we find at Gaylords. And then we just package them up. We typically throw them in boxes, build a pallet, ship them down to Max to save on freight. And then Max handles the rest. So he knows what the books are worth. Yeah, my team could list them, right? Once we know what books are good, we could go through that process. But when people are asking technical questions, my team doesn't want to, step aside and go find that book and answer the questions. We want to, list them like widgets. That's how our business operates on, smaller margins than what Max is doing. And so we're happy to say, hey, he's an expert. He's providing that knowledge. We ship them down to him. And then every month I get a check and a little bit of information. It's kind of fun. And of course I get the fun texts along the way too, when we sell expensive books. But that's essentially the program. It's hands off for me. I box it up, ship it out, and Max handles the rest. So it's incredibly easy for me. It's kind of a no-brainer. Sure, I'm giving up 50% of the profits, but I wouldn't have known which books were worth it. And it would take a lot more time to research than what Max provides. So that's the program in a nutshell. And if you guys want, you can reach out. We got a little form you can fill out just on our site. We were giving Max some I was giving him. Matthew was being very kind. I was being a little bit impatient, but Max was trying to figure out the link and get into StreamYard and technology. He's an expert in the old school things, and new school things not as much. So we made a quick little site for him. We'll actually have a link to this interview. We'll put some more content up over time, so it'll kind of be your digital postcard there. But you can go here. You can find him on Facebook. So thebookflipper.com/Dusty, kind of a play with the books in bourbon, because old bottles of bourbon are called Dusties, typically something you find in grandpa's attic. And old books, tend to get dust as well. So thebookflipper.com/Dusty. There's just a quick little overview. We're not really affiliated with Max. It's his program. I trust him. I endorse him. If he ran for office, I'd probably vote for him. But he's very honest. I think you guys can tell that from this interview. So don't do us dirty, Max. Don't our relationships. But Max is a good guy. If you do want to use that link, I think we've worked out a little bit of a commission, so we'll get a little thank you and can help. Maybe you could be a sponsor on a future show as a result. But if you don't want to give us the commission, if you don't like us, I do want to always disclose when it's an affiliate link. You can find Max on your own as well and just go around us. We're not trying to be the gatekeepers here. Max has been around for a while. I know Latin Pickers has talked about him, some other people have as well. So he's developing a name, a good reputation in the community. And that's the program in a nutshell. Can't talk these days. Max, can you explain a little bit more, like how does that process work? And kind of imagine our audience is probably bifurcated, and some of them are going to be bulk sellers and some are going to be cherry pickers. So how would this program work for either of those crews?
Right.
Each of the cases.
Well, every consignor I work with, and I see a few here chatting it up, does it a little bit differently. But more or less what happens is the consigners send me pictures or videos of books. All I need is the spine. I don't even need the cover. You can make a stack of books 20 high and just take a picture or shoot me a quick 5-second video, and I will tell you which ones are the good ones. And I usually tell you within 5 minutes of you sending me that picture. That way they don't have to wait around on your tables that long. And then you can just put them in a box. When the boxes get filled, you can decide when to send them to me. There are some people, like I think I have a call later on with Latin Pickers. Actually, we're going live, going through a Gaylord. So we'll probably spend an hour or so looking at books together. And one of the beautiful things that happens on my end is I'm helping you guys understand books better, these non-barcode books. And as you do this more and more, you get better and you get quicker at getting that paper gold out of those Gaylords. Because this whole thing started because of the Gaylords and me trying to save these great books that the FBA sellers weren't even acknowledging. And I'm trying to get them to understand that there's high priced books in there. There's money to be made. You're going to be making more money per Gaylord if you use this service that I've set up. But, I do it so many ways. I do live videos with people, but I get pictures all day long on my phone. And I'm saying I'm either going thumbs up or thumbs down or giving it a heart or yeses and nos. And it's an amazing experience to spend my days every day just going through books. I have a pallet of books coming to me tomorrow, about 30 boxes, and it's all the same subject matter. It's all books about mushrooms, fungi, and psychedelia. And those books are coming from Texas, and it was all one person's collection. And this is a consignment for my friends Heather and Max in Texas. And I already know those books are going to fly off the shelves. So, sometimes in these Gaylords, and I've explained this to you before, Caleb, is sometimes you just get that magical Gaylord that came from one person, and you get that one person's collection. Most of the time, they're non-barcoded books that they've been collecting for years, and we can make money selling those, with a platform that I'm trying to set up.
So if someone's doing cherry picking, and again, your response time is pretty quick. I hate to, put you on the spot, but I know that you're incredibly responsive to it. If someone's cherry picking and sees a really, fascinating book and it might be $5 and they're not sure if they should buy it, are you usually pretty quick to respond if they, once they're in the program and they've got that relationship and your phone number? Can they just text a photo and you're like, yep, it's really good, or nope, don't bother?
Mm-hmm. They can, once I develop a relationship with them, they can text me anytime, and I get those texts every day. I got that text the other day, and it was $1,000 book that they picked up at a thrift store, and they're not even waiting for the putting in a box. They've already mailed it off to me, so I can sell it for them. They could easily sell it themselves, but it's just time, and then it's having to answer questions that you get from prospective buyers on eBay. And if you don't have the knowledge, it's hard to close that deal on $1,000 book unless you know about that $1,000 book. And the one thing that I can definitely say with confidence is in these Gaylords that are the $100 books and the $500 sets and the $1,000 books. They're not in every Gaylord, but they're consistently in the Gaylords, and I can tell that by the growth of my business and how big it's growing.
Love it. So again, it's a very easy process. I do it occasionally. We do it with some bigger deals. I think I'm really close to closing that deal I talked about earlier. From a couple months ago, people get very, attached to books, but I've got a pretty big library collection I'm going to be picking up. An individual, the father passed away, and they've got, the family trying to get those books back into the hands of somebody good. And there are some really good historical type books, German sets, all kinds of stuff. So I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with that process. And we were trying to figure out how to get you up to the location, or maybe I was going to go out. I've got a pretty intriguing idea involving a moving company, and we'll see if it pans out. So if that works, I'll tell a good story next week on the show, and hopefully we'll get some good books.
Are those the philosophical books you sent me pictures on?
Exactly.
Yep. Okay. I meant to ask you about that. Okay.
Yeah, there'll be some really good stuff eventually coming in. It's been a bit. For you that are in sales or ever trying to land a deal, never give up. Make sure you're, don't be annoying, but this was a deal that I hope, we're really close to landing, and it's something that I've been working on since February. So, don't be afraid. Every month, set yourself a reminder, drop a line, be kind, offer different approaches, and eventually we were able to figure out something that I think works. So we'll see how that pans out. So again, if you guys want to sign up, do you have a fancy name for your program, Max? Avery's got restrictedinventory.com. Do you have like a brand or some sort of a
I just call it what my eBay store is, Common Ground Finds.
Perfect.
But I always refer to these books as paper gold.
Perfect. Paper gold.
Maybe I should be thinking more along that line.
A little bit shady, Rapunzel turning books into gold, but that could work. We could be spinning the straw. If people do want to find you again, they can fill out the form on our site. If you want to give us a little kickback, that's great. Otherwise, you can find Max on Instagram at Common Ground Finds. And you're not on much other social media, are you?
No, I don't have time.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like Emperor Nero over there, giving thumbs up and thumbs down for all the books that come across his path. And he's very pleasant to work with, as you can see, just based on the conversation here. He's got a big heart, cares about what he does, cares about the people he works with. And I'm glad we met, and I'm glad you're on here sharing your love of books and hopefully giving people a different avenue. So again, if you are ever coming across old books, if you're doing bulk especially, you can set those aside. You can send photos in. You can do, set up a FaceTime with Max as well. So he's very accessible, very approachable, and hopefully gives people different options on ways to make some money. If you can start squeezing an extra $30 out of every Gaylord you go through, for those of you doing truckloads, what does that turn into over the course of, a couple months, couple years as well? So it's a great program. Feel free to reach out to Max as well. I realize that us saying thebookflipper.com/Dusty makes people think your name is Dusty. And if we'll never do that, we'll take the blame.
Yeah.
We got 2 other orders of business, and then we'll kind of wind this down. We've been going an hour. So thanks for your time, Max. Thanks for those of you that jumped in live and asked some questions. We have a giveaway to do at some point here, which we can do right at the end. And we also have some questions that have been coming in. And so we'll work our way through those, and we'll just rapid fire those your way, Max.
Okay, perfect.
So let's go through some of these right here. We can kind of rapid fire read off some of these. So someone's been buying in bulk for about 2 years. They've saved all their antique books for slow months. You guys are going to make some serious money together is what they said. So that's a good sign right there.
I look forward to hearing from them.
Someone asked, do you sell groups of books? There's been a few questions like this. Do you ever package groups of a similar topic together and sell them as a package set?
All the time. Whether it's vintage science fiction paperbacks or the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, the Care Bears, anything like that. I'm always packaging things together and putting them in lots, because you have to be a little bit different than everybody else out there. And sometimes you can give a better value for 6 vintage science fiction magazines rather than making 6 different listings. You can get rid of those 6 books quicker free up that shelf space for the next group of books.
Yeah. That's good. This is one of the most common questions I forgot to ask, but I've seen it here a few times already. Signed books, nonfiction, fiction. What does it mean, and how do you know if it's worth more?
Depends on the signature. Most signed books have higher value than a regular book if it wasn't signed. I know that Jurassic Park is coming out again in Christmas time, I think. So any Michael Crichton book that has a signature is going to sell for more than the Michael Crichton book without the signature. So these are things that I often think about. You know, I'm always going to the web pages, what movies are coming out in a year or two, so I can start buying those books up before it hits the market. But signed books are great. I mean, I have a book in my collection right now that's for sale. I think I have it listed at $18,500. It's a limited edition book. Only 300 copies were produced, and it was written and signed by John F. Kennedy when he was a senator from Massachusetts. And the book is about 30 pages, and it's all about his father, Joe. But it only went to close family members at the time, and any one of those copies right now is already in someone's collection. There was only 300 produced, and I have one of those copies right now. But
did that copy come out of a Gaylord, or where did you?
No, I actually recently bought the book collection from a book dealer who had passed away. I bought it from the estate of the family. She was a book collector for 40 years, and so I had the privilege and the honor to buy her entire 6,000 book collection.
Oh, wow.
And because she was a book dealer, every one of those books was a highly desirable book.
Yeah.
She did quit the business before the boom of the internet. But one of the beauties of her books is, because this is the way book dealers did it back in the day, they would take a light leaded pencil and they would write notes on the inside cover page of what the edition was. And so every one of the books I have of hers has all this great information in it. It makes my job easier. It even has her price, but that price could have been from 1978, so I have to update the prices. But I was very privileged to get her collection.
Yeah. So a lot of collectibles like Rolexes and bourbon, as we've talked about it here, over COVID have really gone through the roof in terms of value. Have you seen a similar uptick over the last 2 years with collectible books?
Yeah, but they're not buying the book to get it graded and then putting it into a plastic hard case like they are with video games or VHS tapes even right now. But there are people who will tell you that the internet is not the best thing for the book dealer, because now all the competition is right there. Years ago, before the internet, in order for my boss back in the day to sell a book, someone had to walk into the store to buy that book. I find it a great blessing to be able for someone to pull a book out of a Gaylord, send it to me to list it, and me to sell it to someone, in Maine, 3,000 miles away from me. So I just find the advent of the internet and selling books to be a magical place.
It's a beautiful blend, coming together of old school and also new school technology.
Yeah, but not every book dealer believes that.
Sure. Well, and again, we've bought out bookstores that have gone out of business, and the owners are very angry at the internet because it ruined their business. Right. But again, just like we talk about with selling on Amazon, if you don't adapt, then you're going to get left behind. Right. And business is changing, economies are changing. COVID accelerated so many things. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, keep up with things, you'll get swept behind and left behind. So
right. But to answer your question, the answer is yes, that there is definitely an uptick in these books.
So zoom out over the last 20 years, let's call it. Has there been more of an interest in collectible books or less of an interest, and have prices kind of gone up on some, classic historical books, or are they holding steady? Like what are pricing trends over the last couple of years?
Yeah, it all depends on the book, of course, but I do believe that there's definitely an uptick of prices. But it all depends on what's going on in the world today. politically we have blue states and red states, but how that translates for me is I sell a lot more Civil War books. You can make the reference on how that happened, why I think that happens, but we sort of have a divided country right now, and I think people are trying to reread history and find out, what a divided country looked like in 1865.
Yep. Cool. We got a couple more questions there, Matthew, that have come in. I want to just, since I'm asking the questions, what's the coolest thing you've sold in the last 6 to 12 months? And then what's the most expensive thing you've sold in the last?
Wow. I knew that question was coming. The most expensive I can only talk about vaguely. I think I've shared with you before, Caleb. I can't talk real specifically.
Yep.
But it was a $45,000 collection. It was a collection that was left behind, and I had acquired it, and a certain group had bought the entire collection to preserve it for the future. And so they bought that collection for $45,000 from me. But one of the most expensive books I sold is the first Alcoholics Anonymous book, which for all my Gaylord digger throwers is a red book. It's not the blue one that you're finding the second, third, or fourth edition of. If you find that one that's red or has that yellow, white, and red cover, you're going to make a minimum of $5,000. I think I sold mine for $8,000. And that did not have a dust jacket on it, but that first edition is probably one of the highest sought after books out there.
Yeah, that's a good tip, because I'm sure people have seen that one out and about. It is rare, which is why it commands the price, but it's definitely out there.
Right.
This is a similar question for you. What's the most amazing thing you've ever found inside a book?
$100 bills. That's easy.
Plural, multiple $100 bills?
Oh, yes. $100 bills, yes. Often found either in Bibles or cookbooks. That's why you don't throw those cookbooks away in the Gaylord.
What other questions do you see in there, Caleb? Or if you can see those comments there too that you guys want to tackle, there's quite a few different ones in there.
Someone asked, you might have addressed this already. Someone said they get a lot of vintage paperback romance novels. Does that stuff tend to sell well, or is there any specifics to look out for in that world?
Yeah, well, it's funny. They sell every day. And I'm not opposed to it. If one of my consigners said, Max, we have a Gaylord and there's 800 romance novels and it's 6 different authors, I would definitely go for that, because you can sell those in lots, put them together, and they're going to sell every day. And in the end, I want my consigners to be happy with their monthly money, and I want to be able to move the product to the people who want it. So everybody's happy with that. But I wouldn't save them one at a time and try to build something. I would only want my consignor to just happen upon a Gaylord of them.
Yep.
That's good. What about, are there any books or places that people want to learn more about selling these types of books that they can go to, aside from this podcast right here?
Well, I would say the best advice I would give someone, if they have the time, is to work for a rare book dealer. Even volunteer their time 5 or 10 hours a week, because you have to be hands-on with these books. Very hard to learn about old books through technology. You have to hold them. You have to see what it's all about. You have to know who the great illustrators of the day were, and look at those illustrations. You have to know about the copyright year and the different publishing companies and what their print runs were. And this is not information that's just readily available without doing a dissertation, for the next 2 years. But that's how I learned back in the day in my 20s, working in an antiquarian bookstore and actually holding these books. They're still around. There's probably one in every major city, if not 2 or 3. And if you wanted to really learn about it, I would go into one and ask them if they needed some help.
Yeah, imagine that. You put the time in, surround yourself with it, surround yourself with those that love it, and you'll probably pick up a few things. But the answer is there's really no easy way to do it, which is one of the values you provide. You've put the homework in, Obviously, you're a teacher as well, or in a past life you were a teacher, and so that you're able to kind of share that knowledge with everybody else as well. But the more that you'll interact with Max, the more you start to develop an eye. At first, again, I was asking, where do I go? What sections do I look at? Where should I spend my time? And pretty soon you kind of learn what kind of has that value, and it actually speeds up the learning curve with future interactions as well. So those are all good. I think the bottom line is Max probably needs to start a podcast or maybe a radio show, just like Steve did. Do something here and start sharing this content. I know you've got an email thing going out. Maybe you can start expanding the reach of that a little bit as well.
What we should have done is we should have had people, instead of just post questions, post some books they currently had. Sure. And we could show them his information or his skills live on the live stream.
Well,
I didn't think about that before. It's a missed opportunity. We've got to have you back on.
I am open to a monthly podcast with you guys, but unless I have Matthew on my side, I would never be able to run my own. I'm amazed I'm even on this right now and logged in.
Have you hired anybody else to help with listing, packing, or are you just a one-man band at this point?
No, I have 3 employees. They work between 20 and 30 hours a week. I do all the pricing, all the research. They do all the listing, all the shelving, and the shipping.
Perfect.
So all my time is on the book and the price of the book.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great example of doing what you do best and kind of outsourcing your hiring for filling the gap.
I work out of my house. I have the luxury of working out of my house. But I have employees who either take books home or they come to the house and they work. I remember seeing a question earlier about background or whatnot, and what backgrounds I use. I just use poster board you buy at the dollar store. It doesn't have to be fancy. I sometimes I'll just change up the colors just to make the books look different, so it all doesn't run together when someone's scanning my site.
Yep.
But it's just dollar store poster board.
Love it. Cool. Well, I think we've been going a little over about an hour 15, so I think we're going to wind it down here. Thanks for your time, Max. Matthew, I think we're going to do a giveaway. It looks like we only had one comment on the Facebook post with questions. So I don't think.
Did you say was it Facebook post that it was, or just in here in general? I forget what we said.
Here, because I think Doug already won something before. So Doug's kind of sneakiness there. So maybe do a kind of a random with people here. We kind of threw out, Max, if you're open to it, we'll throw you on the spot again. If you're open to doing 20-minute call with whoever wins this and just kind of let them ask you questions and pick their brain, and then we can send some Scout IQ swag their way as well.
Completely open for that. Yes.
Let's get
I can find a winner right now if you give me a second. But what do you use your Instagram? Someone wants to know what your Instagram was again, or are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram. It's Common Ground Finds with an S at the end, and then the little line underneath after the S. I don't know what you underscore.
So it's all lowercase, no spaces.
No Common Ground Finds. Yep, all one word.
And then an underscore, because probably someone already had Common Ground Finds without the underscore. Amazing how that works. Well, as Matthew does that, we'll figure out who wins the swag kit and then some time with you. Again, thanks for being on here. Thanks for sharing your heart, your excitement for Dusty Books. And if you guys do want to sign up and check out Max's program, whether you're doing cherry picking or bulk, please check out thebookflipper.com/Dusty. And we do these every Thursday. Next Thursday, I will be filming from a very special location. So tune in to see where that is. That's something I've been excited about for a while here. And we'll have to pick a guest. We got a couple in mind. So we'll get somebody good on for next week. It'll be Books and Bourbon episode 6. So the fact that we've been going for more than 2 or 3 blows me away. And we'll see how long these continue to go. So Matt, you want to pick somebody here and then sign off?
So I've got them pulled up right here, except the problem is it's a YouTube one. So we just have a YouTube username. So what I guess we'll do. So it's London Aircraft is the YouTube name. This was the question that came through from them. If this is you and you're still watching, reach out to let's do this. Let's reach out to either the support email, so support@scoutiq.co, or find me or Caleb on Facebook or Instagram. Shoot us a message and let us know this is your username on YouTube, and then we will connect you. If this doesn't work out, we'll find someone else after we've signed off. If you don't reach out in 24 hours, 10 minutes, 5 minutes,
clock is ticking.
3 minutes. I'm sure.
24 hours.
24 hours. We'll just select someone else on the list here and we'll reach out personally to that person. But congratulations on winning that. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with us. And this has all been super interesting because I know very little about this, but you've already given me just enough information that I feel more confident looking at some old books and trying to pick out some value than I would have at the start of this. So thank you for sharing all that.
Oh, you're welcome, Matthew. And you can always text me. It's okay.
Well, just a quick shout out. You said you're doing a kind of a live walkthrough with Gaylords tonight with Latin Pickers.
I have one scheduled tonight and I have one scheduled tomorrow. Yes.
Perfect. So check that out at Latin Pickers.
Oh, it's not live like that. It's between Latin Pickers and I.
I thought this was going to be something.
No.
Look over your shoulder and see the process, but maybe
that's a great idea, though.
Follow Latin Pickers on Instagram. They got good content, but really, you're not invited to that party.
I love those guys. Yep.
Invite only. So we'll get you back on the channel soon, just to kind of to learn more about what sells well. Maybe share some examples. Maybe put you on the spot with some real photos. But this has been fun. Hopefully, you guys got the value. If you did, comment on YouTube. Smash that like button, as the influencers say. But it does help. It does help our channel get some traction. We do appreciate that. So thanks for coming on. If you guys are drinking anything, we'll sign off with a healthy cheers, and we'll catch you next week.
Cheers.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you.